Hello. So, if I had been a little older when I first read this book, I would probably have come away worshipping whales and might have tried to found a religion based around that. Now, I know that this is not a whale. It is related, but it is not a whale. And, but that's just, how the book affects me even to this day. Not that I'm going to do that necessarily because different reasons than when I was much younger, but it makes a strong case. When I do a sequential reread of Animorphs, this is the first book that I actively look forward to getting to. No disrespect to the other three, but if I were to do a non-sequential, just the highlights, I would start with this. Um, Cassie is my favorite Animorph, and the first and last chapters of this book, when she morphs for fun, well, semi-fun, um, are why. At the end, she just goes and off and swims with the dolphins. She acquired the dolphin morph for the mission of the book, but at the end, she's just like, I feel like becoming a dolphin and hanging out with the other dolphins. And she has a reason, and I'll get to that too. But in the beginning, the first chapter of the book, she goes into her family's barn and acquires the squirrel DNA and then morphs into a squirrel for her own personal thing. She wants to see who's been sneaking into the barn. Some animal has been sneaking into the barn and harassing the animals. And she almost gets eaten by Tobias. And this is the scene in the television show. She's a rabbit, just trying out the rabbit morph, but she's got an active. She's, she's being an assistant to her father's work in her morph experiment in this one. And the squirrel comes back to great effect in Animorphs number 12, The Reaction. But the main mission of this book is finding out why Cassie and Tobias, who both have particularly strong ties to the morphing ability, are receiving what seem to be messages or visions. Everybody apparently is knows that something's going on, but it's very strong with Cassie, who is the most talented morpher, and with Tobias, who is stuck in morph. And it turns out, obviously, well, not obviously from anything I've said or from the cover of the book, but anyone watching this knows probably it's Prince Elfangor's younger brother, Aximili Escaruth Isthel, in a dome at the bottom of the ocean. And the best thing about Megamorphs 4, which wasn't a huge fan of, but the best part about that is we get a little bit of Axe before he leaves, and in Megamorphs 4, it's an alternate reality, so they don't rescue him, he just leaves. But we see him going a little stir-crazy. And it was interesting, this is my first time reading this, having read that, and thinking, when we first meet Axe, what he's been up to and where he's coming from. But first they have to figure it out. They try to, or they see things on TV about apparent alien garbage washing up on shore that they recognize, but the people who found it don't recognize, and they see this as, oh, the Yeerks are going to see this, and they'll recognize that it's Andalite, and they will go searching, so we have to find it if we're going to help it, and it's going to help us. They get the dolphin morphs to go deep into the ocean, but it's one of the books where they have to do so many things in order to get there. They have to morph into seagulls to get to a boat that's going out to sea, just because they don't have time to swim as far as they need to swim as dolphins, even though dolphins are fast, and some of them, Marco, can't swim. So if they go out there, demorph, and then morph back, there's a chance Marco could get in trouble while he's in human form. So it's one of those very complicated. I don't know if she and her husband did that sort of thing just to stretch the books out, or but they do really get into process. Like in the one where they become ducks to fly long distance. That's a lot of the morphs and a lot of the stuff is just very realistic and practical, as far as that sort of thing can go in the Animorphs world, as realistic as anything can be in the Animorphs world. But they eventually do get there, and they eventually do find Axe and rescue him. Um, but one of the challenges for Cassie at least, is thinking, well, dolphins are not almost as intelligent as people, but very, very intelligent creatures. Is it right to turn into a dolphin and take over a dolphin's mind, or is it akin to what the Yeerks do when they infest humans and other intelligent creatures? And I think that that's kind of somebody, I forget whose book it is, but somebody brings that up again when they become orangutans, or when they morph into lyrans, who are not only intelligent but psychic. Um, I forget if they have any issue with it with the Hork-Bajir or the Taxons. Um, but I think that concern is answered by when they become dolphins, they don't care. They just the dolphins want to have fun. Dolphins want to play in the river where they first morph, or way out to sea. The dolphins just want to play. And at the end, when she goes into the tank with the dolphin, she's kind of asking permission to use their bodies. But she doesn't really get permission. She just kind of enters, and then they say, "Come play with us." So it's an interesting quandary that I think is deliberately not really answered. And then the other thing, the whale, why I would have come away worshipping whales is, um, you know, Applegate tried to. She never became any of these animals, but she tried to get as accurate as she possibly could with what it's like to be them. And that's with the playful dolphins, with the playful dogs, with the very confident, balanced cats, very confident skunks in book 9. But with the whale thing, and I don't remember if Cassie ever morphs into a whale while we're in a Cassie book and getting it from her perspective. She does morph a whale later on, a couple of times. But the idea that the whale, the humpback whale, I think is a humpback whale, when they encounter the humpback whale and they save it from the group of sharks, and it then communicates with the dolphins, because it can communicate with dolphins and they're in dolphin bodies, but it knows that they're not dolphins because it's watched a mangled Marco turn back into a human, and it helps them keep him afloat so that he doesn't drown. But it's kind of sentient, kind of intelligent, but on a different wavelength. Cassie describes it as being indescribable. She just kind of knows the story of this whale who's old enough to remember whaling ships and that sort of thing. Whales and sharks, the biggest things in the sea, have the longest lifespans on the planet, I believe. I know that there are sharks that are hundreds of years old. Turtles also, they live a long time. I think whales, of those three, have the shortest lifespans, but they're still very long lifespans. And but just the spiritual connection that I don't know if the other Animorphs had it with the whale. Like Cassie communicates with the whale, and I think the others just kind of hang back. But she learns so much. She learns where the thing that's in the ocean that's not supposed to be in the ocean is, from the whale, and that's how they find Axe. So it's a very interesting passage, probably the least accurate depiction the least realistic depiction of something in wildlife, an animal, a non-human animal, in any of the Animorphs books, but who knows, maybe truer than even K.A. Applegate, Catherine Applegate knows. Now Axe, getting to Axe, when they meet Axe, Axe was my first Spock-like character, I think. Possibly someone in Space Cases was, but none of them were really Spock-like. Even, I think Radu was the Spock figure, but he wasn't particularly Spock-ish. And I mean like the talking in very formal English and seeing ridiculousness and inaccuracies in the way that humans do things, and that is what Axe is. I'm forgetting. Oh well, in the Predator, he is more pronounced because he's in more of that book. But just his first response, his skepticism with the humans who can morph, and how he acquired a shark DNA and travels back as a shark among dolphins. He's very, I mean, obviously, fish out of water is an apt metaphor here, because he's on a different planet. He's a kid. He's something I didn't realize the first few times through, or didn't really click, but he has less experience fighting the Yeerks than the Animorphs do, because in the Predator, he starts talking about, yeah, there are Hork-Bajir and there are Taxxons, like, we know. Have you ever fought them? We've fought them. And he's a little insecure about his arist status, that he's not a warrior yet, but he becomes a warrior by necessity. Yeah, their escape from the Visser 3 monster is wonderful. The return of the not just one whale but multiple whales, suggesting and different species of whales. It's a very magical book, or a spiritual sort of book. But again, Cassie is the she feels the most loyalty to the planet at large. The others are just, and in the beginning it's just, we got to save humans. But as I mentioned from the encounter where the Yeerks are stealing water or taking water, draining a lake, there's an environmentalist strand that goes through the books, and she is at the heart of it, especially as of this book, but also as of the book number 9. I think it's called The Change. That's her reason to fight, and she's a reluctant warrior because she is peace-loving. She's not an aggressive person. She's the one who ends conflicts rather than starting them. But it's her. They've all got to have a reason to fight, and the environmental edge is hers. But also, as I mentioned, she's my favorite because of the first and last chapters of this book, where she just goes to morph into a dolphin just to play with the dolphin. She morphs into a squirrel to do her own housework, or the figuring out the problem that she's experiencing in her human life. She uses the power to morph to do that. And again, the squirrel comes back to great effect in number 12, The Reaction. I think that's what it's called. Anyway, Ram the Blade Ship. I gotta finish the Predator so I can talk about that today too.